So welcome to another wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at Blitzkrieg.
Lightning War.
From PSC Games.
And officially it's Paolo Mori's
Yes.
Blitzkrieg.
Now, I say a wargame review. That's a very strong term. This is an abstract game.
Yeah.
With a war
abstract,
theme, a World War II
historically
theme on
themed
it,
game.
right?
Yeah.
So this game came out, what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. I would say 2019, 2018.
I feel like it says 2019 on the back.
Okay.
And this edition was reprinted in 2021. So this is the new edition that has the Nippon expansion built into it and the solo rules in here. So if you're going to get it, get this version of it.
Yeah.
So this is
and I think that's the only version you can really get now.
I'm sure it is, but if you're a troll on the second-hand market because you're too cheap to spend $20 on a new version, make sure you get the right one.
I think it was 30.
Was 30?
Yeah, it was 30.
Okay. If it's 30 on
No,
the second-hand market, you're doing it wrong.
We got it at Gen Con, and I think they might have knocked some money off that. So it might be 35.
Really?
Yeah, that's my guess.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Well,
but all in all, it's a neat little game.
yes. So this was extremely well received a couple of years ago. It has the Dice Tower Seal of Excellence.
Which, that is always what I look for in my war games.
What that means to me is that
absolutely
it was,
crucial.
that it was popular. It doesn't say anything else. It just means it was popular. Usually.
Or they got paid because they said, I will put my logo on there, right?
Money was definitely exchanged in that. I'm sure that's how it works. But,
yeah, we're not jaded. There's no.
But, people would tweet about it all the time.
I heard about it all the time.
It was like the only thing that people talked about when it first came out, I swear. So we finally bought a copy at Gen Con this year.
Well, the first edition, you couldn't find. I mean, I looked.
Okay, I didn't know
I think everybody talked about it, and I looked, and I think there were some copies available, but people were charging, $60, $70, and I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna pay that for an abstracted 20-minute game.
Yes.
But we paid $30 new on a second edition with an expansion added in.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Everybody talked about it. I'm interested.
Well, and the other part of that is PSC Games is a UK-based company, and they're not a particularly big company. They mostly, PSC stands for Plastic Soldier Company. So they do, miniatures for, Battle Group and Flames of War. That's what they're known for. So they have a small board game line, but I know that, getting reprints of things done, they don't do, massive runs of things. So, sometimes you kind of got to get it when it's hot with them. So I'm glad when they reprinted it, they did print a lot. Gen Con had a ton of them because they knew it was popular, and it's small package, small format. It's easy to kind of get into people's hands. So, all that being said, we played this a couple of times just barely, and it was a blast.
Yeah, I had a great time, even though I got trounced both times. There's a lot of very cool elements here. Definitely. In an abstracted format, it's just some lines and boxes with some symbols on them. Yeah. That's what it is. And you're drawing units.
I'm drawing my units. They have values on them. There's basically 3 different types. And then and then the game is how and when you place which of your units.
Yeah.
And, there's some secondary effects that trigger when you place them, but you're trying to do it to maximize your scoring and your momentum to keep those points kind of rolling in. And it's first to 25 points effectively will win.
Yeah.
Or there's some other kind of end game conditions. But it is this extremely tight, abstract game that is... I don't know if this is normally the kind of thing that I would go for. If you were oh... this is the kind of thing that I like. I'm like, okay, sure. But because of how well this was rated, I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
It's got a World War II theme. Let's give it a go. And it was... I can 100% understand why people really like this game.
Well, it's interesting. It's got a lot... I mean, it has a lot of that take that element.
Yeah.
You kept bombing my units.
Yes.
And I would have to randomly lose a unit. And ultimately, that's what ended up killing me because I didn't have any units to play from my pool. So it has some of that to it. But you're in essence competing over a very small 3 or 4 box track. And you're trying to place your units there to get a lead on the scoring track so that when you finish that track of boxes, you're going to...
A campaign.
Yeah, a campaign. you're going to score some points. And that's what it boils down to. It's, I'm going to play here, I'm not going to play there, I'm going to play this really cool unit here to do another thing and finish that track so that I can go ahead and score it. There's a lot of neat
Or
elements.
Conversely, this campaign's a lost cause, I'm going to toss in this terrible unit just to get the cool little square bonus, knowing that I'm not going to get any points, but I might eke out something out of this that could help me somewhere else or help me in the long term. There's some very, very cool decision points and neatness to it.
Well, and in
it's 20 minutes.
Yeah, in 20 minutes.
Amazing.
It actually has a lot of strategy.
Yes, I agree.
In an abstract way. I mean, you're in essence fighting over these boxes.
Yeah.
There's no combat, there's no dice rolling, there's none of that. The values don't mean anything against each other. They're just pushing a scoring marker up a track, and it has to be on your side of the ledger to score. But there's a lot of decisions about when you place, where you place, what you place.
And you can't just abandon something, because then the opponent's going to get up into the bonus victory points.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to start scoring way more points than you could claw back in other theaters. So you're like, I got to toss units into a lost cause just so I don't lose as badly. Which you get like, hey, there's some grand strategic war stuff there. That's pretty cool. Like the ways that you're thinking about things.
Yeah. I don't know. When we first started playing it, you know, the motion of, I don't understand what I'm doing. What are we supposed to be doing? But I could see some of those real, in my opinion, really sharp decisions that you have to make to decide, I'm going to place there. Or, you know what? I don't care about this theater at all, but I'm going to place here just to get the printed bonus.
Yeah.
Because, man, some of those printed bonuses are really good. Getting additional units to your reserve. Taking the technology and discovering new units, that was really sharp, I thought.
Yeah, those are real fun, those ones. Because you get different effects that you don't have in your core units.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of them's just like really strong numbers where you're like, dang, I've got a 4. But then you also have like task forces, which like negate the unit, like it negates what's there. So you're like, I got a real strong unit, but I don't get the cool bonus. It actually hurts me. Or there's the ones, like you can get an extra blitz unit. And the blitz units, you can play them and immediately place a second one. Normally those blitz units have a 0 value on them. And so you're like, I'm doing this just for the bonus. And then you're looking at the places on the board where you want to do that, because there's 2 good bonuses kind of lined up. And you're like, oh, that's cool. But then it leaves the next space open for you to come in, finish the track, and then if I'm not in the lead, then you're going to score a whole bunch of points.
Yeah.
So it's bonus. And then you look at the blitz units that allowed you to do that, and one of them's a 0. So you're like, you then have to like make sure that you're pretty high up on the track before you do that, knowing someone's going to sweep them with big points and swing it back the other way and score just because you want to get some cool bonuses. Little bits like that in the shape of the board and the layout of the campaigns is very cool.
Yeah. Along the same lines that you're saying, some of these technology units are way better than, you know, the units that you have in your reserve are 0s, 1s, 2s, or 3s.
Yes.
Some of these units are 4s. Were there 5s?
I
think they were all 4s.
5, but yeah, 4s.
But, you know, it's funny, down in the Pacific, in our second game, down in the Pacific Ocean, I was like, ooh, I've got this one wrapped up. You're not going to be able to score and get the points. Because I had a 2-point lead, and you playing a 3 would have made it so it was 0. And I'm like, I'm safe there. And I left it open. And sure enough, you threw
played my
4, kicked it to your side, and you got those 5 points. And that was crushing. But I like that. I love that decision. You got to take that risk. You got to make that decision. Is it okay to leave that space open? And then, you know, the continual battle of trying to get a good supply of different types of units, because you have land units, which are tanks or airplanes.
Yeah, airplanes are both land and
sea.
Yeah.
But you got land units and you got sea units. And in order to place in those boxes, you have to have that type of unit. And if you cannot place a unit on the board at any time because you don't have any units that can be placed, you lose the game.
Yes.
And, you know, it was interesting because your style of play was very different than mine. I didn't worry about that. And it cost me in the second game. But you had different types of units, and I'm going to think harder about that next time
Yeah,
and try to.
I'm Germany, so I'm like early game hammering on the industry to get myself more units.
Yep.
And gives me a wider variety. So then I'm looking at, I can place optimally in a number of places, and I'm not, if I've only got 2 or 3 units and I had a bad draw, I then might be forced to play suboptimally somewhere. And in a game this tight, that can really hurt.
Yeah.
And so, you're like, oh, I really want to go for like some points or do some other stuff, but you're like, gotta get that industry early, like it's almost gonna have to. And so there's this fight for these certain things, and that's probably gonna happen fairly regularly in plays.
Yep.
And so then you start playing off of that. Well, I know he's probably gonna try to do this thing here, so I'm gonna try to do something else to counter that. It's such a neat little game.
I was looking at how many 3 units we have. 2.
Is it 1 tank and 2 ships?
4. I have 4 3s, 2 tanks and 2 ships.
Okay, mine are probably the same.
So you're right. The concept of optimal placement is pretty big.
Yes.
You don't have a ton of 3 units. You only have, I think I have 2.
Yeah, mine's 3. The same. I think the base forces are the same.
Yeah, I think we have 5 2s, and then you have a whole bunch of 1s. And with limited spaces on each track before it scores, you want to try to get these tracks up as high as possible.
Yes.
And it's interesting now that, but that's also random because you're drawing out of a bag. So you can't, it's not like you can just start, I'm going to start with all my 3s. It's a random, but what you were doing, drawing more because of the industry to get more, and you have crap units here. I mean, I'm looking at your stuff. You don't have great units.
All my good ones are in my bag.
Yeah. But it's interesting. Maybe that first couple rounds, you should be doing that. Trying to build your forces up so that 1, you have options. 2, you have some of your better units out.
And then if you do get strategic bombed, it's not you're not going to be down to like 1 or 2 units where you then have no choices and you're very close to losing the game outright.
Yeah. There's just a lot of really cool elements for a game. Once again, that has a bunch of boxes on a board.
Yeah.
There's a lot of choices here. There's a lot of interesting decisions. There's a lot of choice. There is some good amount of strategy. How are you going to go about trying to score these points? And the other interesting thing about these scoring tracks, you score the victory points when it's on your side, once again, of the ledger. But you're really trying to get these bonus victory points.
If possible, yeah.
Because, man, if you get 2 or 3 of those, that is a huge bonus. So you really got to place your units wisely. And then there's some of these spaces that are +2 on this track. So trying to get that at the right time. And then there's ones that are +3 on another track.
That stuff's really cool.
Yeah.
Because then you get into the whole, oh, I'm working in Africa and the Middle East, and it's affecting stuff that's happening in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And again, it's an abstract, but you're like,
Yep, you can see the connection.
It's the global war kind of stuff going on, and in an abstract sense, you're like, that stuff's really important.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I can put a big number here and get, a little bit of a lead here, and it can help me to regain a lead over here or extend a lead somewhere else.
Yeah.
And some of those things have knock-on effects. You then place back in somewhere else, and you can do that reverse. Very, very cool. This was a very tight game.
Yeah.
There's a reason it was so well received, and it's very evident from just playing it one time. It's obvious. Then once you start playing it multiple times, like we've done, it really kind of starts to unravel itself. And you start playing against the player and not just the game, which is always the best part of games.
No, I really liked this. I had a good time with it. So
what I'll do is I'll show you how it works real quick, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the board, and it is a small one, and this is a small game. What we're looking at, I think this is 11 by 17, I believe. But the board is made up of these 5 theaters. And within those theaters, you have a number of lines, and these rows are campaigns. So the Western Europe has 3 different campaigns, Pacific Ocean's got 3, Africa and the Middle East only has 2, for example. And then surrounding those, you have this pendulum track of kind of points that you've got going on. So literally all you do in this game is you try to take turns placing a single unit out, and you'll have a pool of units, or a bag of units. So you'll have a little draw bag, and inside the bag are a bunch of different chits that have values, and they have unit types on them. So you look at the board, the squares, kind of these spaces on the board. Brown ones are land spaces, blue ones are ocean spaces, and the ones which are brown and blue are obviously mixed. So for example, a ship can only be placed on a blue space or a blue and brown. A tank can only be placed on a brown or a brown and blue. Or an airplane can be placed on any of them. And that's just it. Like, the theme is here, but it is an abstract game. You're going to draw tiles, and you're going to place them to score, basically. So what I'm looking at is, it's my turn. I'm going to place a unit. I'm going to resolve its effect. And I'm doing it to try to be able to eventually score some points. So if it's my turn, and I've got behind my little player screen, and you know, you're going to have like anywhere from like 2 to 5 units, depending on the kind of game state. I'm going to place a tank. I'm going to place it into the Western Europe. And the rule is that you can place in any theater, but you can only place on the topmost available row. But within that row, you can place on any space. So if I wanted to commit to Africa, I can place it in any one of these 4 spaces. But I cannot place it on any of these. I'm going to place into Western Europe, so I can do either one of these. I'm going to place a tank, and I'm going to place it here into this space here. I've got 2 points. This is worth 2, so I'm going to go up 2 on this track. And then it also tells me underneath this little industry symbol means it's my war manufacturing. On the back of the play screen, you have this excellent play aid. The industry means I draw an extra tile. So I've got my little bag of units, and I'm going to draw an extra one. So it means my pool of ones that I've drawn from my bag available is bigger now. I've got more variety that gives me more tactical options. You want to have more units. So then it goes. So then at the end of my turn, I just draw one to replace the one that I placed. So I drew 2 in this turn. My army got that little bit bigger. So then it goes over to the ally player. And they have, let's say, in their little pool, they've got these 3 units. So they have 1 tank, and they have their general and their admiral. So a tank could be placed into here. And what that would do is it would mean this goes 1 space. And then we finish this campaign, so these 3 victory points would go to the player whose side this pendulum is on. So I obviously wouldn't want to do that. So then I'm looking at elsewhere on the board, what can I affect? What can I kind of get out of some place here? Well, I've already put a battleship down here and got some war points from it. I'm ahead on this victory point track already, so I could kind of go down here to try and bop this again. Or I could maybe start investing in one of these other theaters. And that's where you're looking at what's available, what's good. And so some of the effects are really cool. So I'm going to put this tank down into Africa and the Middle East. I'm going to get 1 on this track. And this is, you know, a long way from scoring, relatively speaking. But this little icon means I can move any other of these pendulums, any other one, not this one, 3 spaces. So that's where you're like, okay, cool. I can now maybe bring this one, 1, 2, 3, over to my side. Or I can start moving another one, or I can get a bigger lead on this, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm on this little space, which has a little extra 1. If I score any of these, I'm going to get 1 extra victory point. Or I might try to swing this one back and then put some big units in here to really get this back on my side, because there's some big points available. But that's kind of some of the choices that you're looking at. These generals, so the general gives you +1 for each other land army you have, so I wouldn't place that anywhere. You want to get a value, you want to do that at the end of a campaign where you've got a bunch of guys in the theater, and then you stick it on and he's worth kind of 4 or 5 points. It can be pretty good. But then I draw a unit out of my little bag. Great. I got another land unit, but this one's a 2, and then it goes back to my opponent. Now the Germans are going to play. So the Germans, they're going to place a little battleship over here. The battleship's going to give them 2 points. 1, 2. And they're going to get nothing from the space because there's no symbol there, but we get 3 points plus 1 because we went past this. So we're going to get 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now, what that does is it opens up all of this. So now that I've done that, I'm going to draw another tile to replace the one that I placed. Oop, that's a hard one. Cool. And then, it's now the allied turn again. And you just go back and forth like this. And it's like, cool, I finished this. I got a bunch of points. That's great. But what it does is it now opens up all of this stuff for my opponent. So now they might go here. And then they might start rocking these tracks again. 1, 2, 3. Now they're up almost scoring 2 extra VPs per. Or they might go here, which is you get an industry. Oh, I believe this is the one where you get one of these technology tiles, which are basically like extra cool units. And these are all face down, but I wanted to kind of show you what they were. Really big number tanks. Or you get fleet aircraft carriers that do bombing raids, nuclear bombs, cool, really cool stuff. You get one of those, and you immediately get to place it into your reserve. It doesn't go into your bag like normal, it goes into your reserve, so it's immediately available. So let's kind of do that, just to show you what that's like. Because these units, you know, they add something real extra, and you got little really cool moments. So you're not going to get many of them in the game, but they can be a very big boon when you do get them. So let's say I placed it here. Great. 2 points, so I go 1, 2. So now if the Axis does score, they're not going to get that extra point. And then I'm going to immediately draw one of these. Let's mix them up. Let's mix them up. And I'm going to draw this one. And that goes immediately into my pool. Great. So it's a ship, but it's a 4 value. That's really strong. I can do, you know, we can get stuff into double points if we're putting down here, or we can really swing this back to our side if there were any spaces free, which there aren't. They can be big, strong moments, which are very, very cool. Then I'm going to draw one to replace the one that I placed. And you can see the ones with the industry tiles or those industry research ones, they help to expand the size of your force. I now have, well, I would have more tactical options. Like if this was a land unit and a plane, it just gives you more flexibility about where you can and can't place. But that's basically the core of this game. You're going back and forth. You're going to fill up probably most of this, and it's kind of first to 25 that's going to win the game, generally speaking. Or if you ever can't place, then you lose the game. And you might not be able to place if there were no eligible spaces. So if you had only ships and there were no naval spaces in the available campaign. So if this was covered up, this one, all of these, well, I think that part of it is very hard to do. It's kind of hard to get people to not be able to place that way. But if you get the strategic bombing, if you get a lot of those, which is how I won our second game with this, every time I do a strategic bombing, you have to randomly discard one of these. And if you don't commit to industry to replace those, you might get bombed off the board. Like, you don't have any reserves. You literally have nothing behind your screen you can't place. You lose the war. You just have no units, no industry. Your army's been destroyed. That's also quite hard to do because if someone sees you doing that, they're going to try to get all the industry to replace those units. But you get those little sub-mini games of unit counts as well as scoring the points, and it makes your placements that much more delectable. But that's kind of the core of this game. It is not a complicated game. It plays very quickly, and it is a tasty little abstract. So that's how the game works.
Once again, bunch of boxes, some tracks.
Extremely simple.
Pretty simple.
And you know, a 20-minute game has to be simple, right?
Yeah.
I place a unit, I resolve the effects, I draw a unit.
Yeah.
That's my entire turn. And those first 2, 3, 4 turns where you're just kind of putting a smattering of guys out, and it's like shaping what the rest of the game's going to be.
Yeah.
That's the part of the game where I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But then, like, once you start to see the shape of the game, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I got to do something here. I can focus here. I'm going to open up another theater to put pressure on you to stop doing this and move over there. Otherwise, I'm going to run away some points over there. That stuff's very, very cool.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm just impressed that the hype is real. And Paolo's able to do this in this very small little game.
Yeah, really tight space, and he really put a lot into the game. I think the best part of the game, aside from the choices and the struggle in that, those technology tokens are just way, way cool.
They're fun. It's fun.
I got the spy, which allowed me to copy a token that you had just played. I thought that was really cool. A scientist allowed me to place anywhere on the entire board.
That was very strong.
And I can't remember how I used it, but I thought at that moment...
You dumped it down here to just pick up war victory points.
Yeah, because I thought it was
strong.
Pushing me. I was almost going to win, and I just came up short. But I really liked those. And, not only the big units, there was a nuke. I drew the nuke at the end of the first game. Had I drawn that a couple rounds earlier...
Yeah.
I could have made some real noise with that, and
you could have heard
that was cool. So there's some variety. I like how the draw bags. It's a random pull, right? You're going to be pulling units out, so I think each game's going to feel different.
Yes, this has a significant amount of replay value, right?
Some games you're going to have really good forces out and your cool stuff. Some games are going to get a ton of ones, and that's
what?
okay.
It's a 20-minute game, no one cares.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The other thing that I think we didn't talk about nor play, it does have solo rules.
Yes, there's a little set of solo rules, which look to be like there's like a set of stratagem counters that you use, and you place out their forces of what they've got. So we'll try that at some point and let you know how it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has solo rules. How good they are, I cannot comment.
Yeah, they're designed by David Turksey, and he has done several games. For instance, remember Knights of Fire?
Yes.
From Mighty Boards with Brian Train. He designed... That was David Turksey. So he designed that game with Brian Train. So he's...
And you mentioned he did the Undaunted solo system?
Yes, so he's put that together, and that's just come out. We don't have a copy yet. So he's a good designer in and of his own right.
You don't get to do those games if you're not good, right?
No,
so I presume it's
Yep, so I think the solo will be playable, and I think it should be interesting. And frankly, this kind of game, I think you're right, though. Playing the other player is really where it's at.
Yeah, and it's a little... This is the game that you pull out after you've played someone else as well.
Yes.
Like, it's
after a 4-hour war game, you pull this out.
And it requires almost zero learning.
Yeah, very quick.
Like these little player shields where you hide your forces have all the rules on it, and it's a small game. Everything's very self-explanatory.
Yeah,
and so you're just like, you've played a big game of Twilight Struggle, then you whip this out. Yeah, you play 2 games that night. Yay.
Yeah,
like that's it. You play this on a lunch break twice.
Yeah,
you can do all that kind of stuff with this, and it's in a tiny little package, so you take it with you on vacation as well.
Yeah.
Like, this has a lot of stuff going for it.
I really like those little war games. We've got several of those, 13 Minutes, 13 Days. I've got Iron Curtain.
Fort Sumter, even.
Fort Sumter, although it's a little bigger box. It's a very simple, compact game, and yeah, you're right. Take those on vacation. Take them with you on a business trip just because you want to throw something together and play a game just to wind down rather than watching boring TV. But yeah, well done. I liked it a lot. I understand why the hype was so great for it.
And this is, you could play this with anyone because it's basically all symbols. Mm-hmm. And, you could play this with your kids, like teenagers and stuff. It's not a complicated or particularly overwhelming game. Mm-mm. So this has a lot of flexibility in that instance as well. So
yeah,
Blitzkrieg from PSC Games. I enjoyed this immensely.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Check this out if you're interested. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.